here to discuss all things NRL and anything sports related. Please give a warm Aussie g'day to the footy fanatic and America's own Corey Jackson in Outside the Sheds.
Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Outside the Sheds, the podcast that gives and gives and gives and gives. Shedheads, I had to relive a little bit. As I sit, I had to power something up. Let me just get this straight. I had to put power into the podcast right at that moment because I'm sitting, it feels like, in an 1860s dungeon right now where I'm broadcasting this show from, because the lighting in here leaves a lot for me to work with, because I right now I'm about ready to put on a night vision goggle to get through this podcast. But as we always say, like I call my dog, first world problems, we have to do what we have to do. But welcome back to the show. I'm really excited because we get to recap Indigenous round. I've told you guys, Shedheads, time and time and time again, my two favorite rounds, Indigenous round and Anzac Day. That's right. If you didn't know that, I should have held the pause a little bit longer so we could have all taken the test together, but we're not. We're moving forward. I have to tell you, these were some of the best jerseys for Indigenous round that I've seen for a little bit of time, because there was a time in the NRL that every team did not do Anzac Day jerseys and Indigenous round jerseys. And I really kind of caught it off guard, for as much as, the NRL talked up both of these, that everybody wouldn't get on board. I'm quite fortunate that I have the first Anzac jerseys produced by the Roosters and by the Raiders. And when I ever wear them out and I'm at close to any type of NRL event, people always stop me and ask, because they are jerseys that not a lot of people have. But I have quite a few Indigenous jerseys as well. But it's just such a great round. It's I'm that type of guy. Anytime you can add passion and belief to something and people can feel at home and can feel like they can express themselves, I'm all about it, because to me, what it does, it brings out stronger play. And that's all we want to see when we watch sports, right? We want to see teams that feel like they're going to leave it all out there. You don't want to see a team that's taking time off, no matter what sport you're watching, all right? Because even professional bowling, you want to see a bowler he's going for the 7-10 split, right? He's going to go for it. Anyway, I don't know why I just brought bowling in, but let's go over a recap of last round, Indigenous round, and it all kicked off with the Dogs and the Dragons. As we all know, your Shedadamus went with the Dragons because he thought that Flano was going to have the boys ready coming out of the bye. Bada bing, bada boom, we're going to get that victory over the Dogs. Kyle's going to have his comeback match where he's going to give it to Canterbury for not staying with him. And that was not the case whatsoever, was it, Shedheads? Because Bulldogs 44, Dragons 12, Burton and Salmon leading the way over a Dragons team that just came out of their bye and laid an egg right in front of everybody. It was kind of disappointing, and I have a feeling if you were a St. George fan, that's not where you were hoping you were going to see for the team after they had a chance to get away and to recharge and all that type of stuff. But the Dogs continue to go forward, even though something major came out of this match, which we're going to talk about later in the 40-20. Next up, Cowboys and Tigers, 42-28. Cows, Valentine Holmes leading a star-studded Origin team, which is kind of funny because the Cows have not really lived up to expectations so far this season. But Val leading the boys down the path, looking strong. Once again during the match, the Tigers find that inner strength where they're going to make it a match, get close, and then the Cows did what they should have done. They put the foot through the floor. Flintstones wise, little Freddie Flintstone, where those feet started kicking, and they just left the Tigers in the dust. Goggles Paisano, if any of you guys remember that. But Cows, that's a big victory because they're losing quite a few guys going into Origin, and they've got a big match coming with those guys out. So they had to get that victory. So congratulations. I know a lot of the talk right now about the Tigers after this loss that Benji is going away to Fiji with his family to get away, and everyone's all up in arms with that. Let me tell you something. Benji Marshall can go to North Dakota if he wants to for vacation, as long as when he comes back he's recharged and stops the Tigers from an 8-match losing streak. 8 matches, that's right. You're losing your number one sponsor, even though they can go, because I got rid of some people that I think needed to be getting rid of. And they're losing $1 million a year because that Brian's lawyers are leaving the front of the jersey. So some troubling times right now with the Tigers, as usual. Sea Eagles 26, Storm 20. The Battle of Brookvale. I hope you all remember the great Glenn Stewart, Adam Blair throwdown, which again the NRL quickly ran to the walls and said we can't have that anymore. When those guys were throwing haymakers and nobody landed a punch on the sideline, but you had 2 pugilists. To me, still when the game was at its best, when guys didn't fake falls, didn't fake injuries, and they went at it. And so Sea Eagles getting a big victory because they started to look like they were about ready to do what Manly's done quite a bit recently, and that is give up leads. And we know that a Craig Bellyache team is not ever going to give up. Yes, they're missing Cameron Munster. Jerome Hughes was back, and they definitely did a push. But the Trbojevic brothers lead the way, get the victory. And like I said, you always get an exciting match when you get a Battle of Brookvale, when you get the Sea Eagles and the Storm going back. Yeah, not as good as back in the good old days of the Stewart brothers, but it was a big victory for Manly. Roosters 44, Raiders 16. The Chooks go to the nation's capital and put on an offensive show, taking down the Baby Greens. Wow. You know what's really crazy about this match is, I've been talking the Roosters up for a few weeks, and you know that they're my pick to lift this trophy at the end of the year. But I have to tell you how, we already know the answer because I said this last week. How does a Sydney Roosters club look again like they did against the Raiders and then really not look like they were the same team against the Sharks? And I think we all know, because I said it last week, the addition of Joey Manu changes the Sydney Roosters. That attack totally changes, and it ignites that team. And we saw it again as Manu was back. The Chooks looked unstoppable again. And really, the Raiders couldn't do anything. They just really could not do anything, besides Elliot Whitehead getting yelled down by the referee, not wanting him to be resting on his haunches, which was ridiculous. Let's not even get me going there. But Sydney back on track and trending upwards after that victory. Panthers 42, Sharks 0. After the stunning loss last week to the Warriors, Penrith really had to get the rally going, meaning you can't, as the defending champion, lose 2 in a row like this, right? Especially the way that they looked against a team that everyone thought they were going to beat. A Warriors club that were missing some important pieces. I don't think anyone really thought that match was going to happen last week. But Penrith had to show their moxie, had to show who they were. And I've got to tell you, Jerome Luai put that team on his shoulders. He had a lot to prove. One, he had to prove, like your Shedadamus said, he was going to be back in the Origin side, which he is. But he had to show that he can lead a club, because there's a lot of pressure going to be on his shoulders next year when he gets to the West Tigers. But Penrith needed him to play that way, and they did. They did. And they, again, are trending fast up the ladder. Number 2 this week after this last week. But a big victory. And wow, I don't think anybody saw that going. Heck, I picked the Sharks to win this match because they looked like the form team of the competition right now. And they just didn't even look like the same club. And yes, I know Nico Hines went out. But I just wasn't expecting Cronulla to lay an egg. I really wasn't. I just did not see that coming. And it's really going to be interesting to see what happens this week against the Eels, because the Eels are getting back two important members, which we're going to talk about in the 40-20. But Cronulla is not going to be with Nico Hines again. And I have not heard if Braden Trindle is back, if he's not back. They were saying that they were going to possibly have him on the bench during Magic Round, but he's got a lot of serious allegations, resting over his head right now. But I don't know, truthfully, what the Sharks are going to do. They proved that they have the mettle when they beat Melbourne down in Melbourne a few weeks ago. But that is a totally different side, because the Eels have to win this week. So an interesting match coming up. Rabbitohs 42, Eels 26. After a tumultuous week, the Eels, they just couldn't get up for this match. And this is why I did not pick them, and I picked the Rabbitohs to win this, because I just thought the Bunnies, for the first time, did not have the weight of the world on their shoulders, because everybody was looking across the field at the Parramatta Eels and how they were going to handle, the loss of their coach, not having two of their most important key members. What was going to happen there? And for the first time in a very, very long time, the South Sydney Rabbitohs looked dangerous, plain and simple. And I think from the foreseeable future, we're going to see Jack Whiten in the halves, which I think all of us thought that he probably should have been for quite a while. But I think Whiten's going to be in the halves. And we even played Latrell in there for a little while, which was kind of crazy. I did not really see Latrell moving in the halves out of the fullback position. But some people have always thought that Latrell could somehow maybe find his way into the halves one way or the other. But the strike was, and I think all that's the changes if Cody Walker gets back in there and all. But it's been a long time since South Sydney has had a reason to celebrate. And unfortunately, you have to say for the Parramatta Eels, it was at their demise. But I think that Parramatta is going to go forward, and they're gonna play well in about 2 weeks. They're going to be a team that is going to start trending upwards. I think it's too late in the season for them to really make a push, but I'm going to make the call right here. I think the Parramatta Eels, as long as further injury doesn't happen, are going to be a dangerous team towards the end of the season. I just really, really, really feel that way. But congratulations for South Sydney getting back in the win column. Titans 36, Broncos 34. Down at halftime, Desi's boys show. I got to tell you, maybe if it was not for the Warriors recently, the Gold Coast Titans are the most inspirational team in the competition. Because I don't know how they're doing what they're doing right now. I really don't. I just don't know how they're doing what they're doing. But they did it again, and they stormed home in the second half, and they beat the Broncos. And the crazy thing was, at the end of the game, looking at the Brisbane Broncos players' faces on the field, they were as shocked as everybody watching the match. And I was so happy for the Gold Coast Titans because, we try not to pick fans or favorites here. Well, we don't pick fans at all, but we don't try not to pick favorites here on Outside the Sheds. You're Shedadamus. That's not what he does. Or not to you guys, I don't. But I just, Des Hasler, when I met him in the middle of, I guess at the end of April, it was the Manly match. And when I talked to him, he really, no matter how strong Gold Coast looked, it was a depressing game because Tanner Boyd's pass really threw everything off, the interception that he threw, and Manly got a victory that you could say they didn't deserve, even though they got it because Gold Coast played so well. And Des, you could see, losing to his old club, he just said it wasn't good enough. He might have mumbled a little bit more than I just said it that way, but he said it just wasn't good enough. And he was not, I was just so happy that he was as friendly as he was, because I know the last thing he wanted to do was to talk to your Shedadamus at that time. But he just said it wasn't good enough. But I think what it was also was he'd seen how hard this team has been working at practice. He's seen how hard this team has been sacrificing, and they just weren't getting the results. And the one thing a coach is always going to fear is when he sees that his team is working as hard as they are, but they're not getting the results. Because people have to have results. No matter if you're in a workplace, if you're working for Apple, if you're working for I don't know, U-Haul. You want to see results. You want to see the chance that you're going to be able to grow with that company, right? And you've got to have that. And they just hadn't been getting it. And then when they got that upset victory over the Warriors, over the Waz, down in New Zealand, it just kind of changed a lot about this club. And I'm going to talk in depth about this Gold Coast Titans team here as we do a little bit more recap of Indigenous round. But an incredible victory for the Gold Coast Titans. Warriors 24, Dolphins 20. Like I just said 2 seconds ago, Shedheads, if it wasn't for this team, the Waz, we'd still be talking about the Titans. But missing 10 starters, they get the victory over a really informed Dolphins club. And I've got to say that it was an incredible match to watch, and we're going to talk about that here in just a matter of moments. But an incredible Indigenous round all the way around. It was really, really fun. The pageantry was great. The pre-games were really, really exciting. NRL knocked it out of the park again with working with the Indigenous people of Australia and just showing that they really go that extra mile. So, again, I want to go back about the match we just talked about as we do a little bit of a deeper dive. Shedheads, we love sports because it inspires us, right? There's nothing better than seeing grown adults, human beings, putting it all on the line, sacrificing, maybe putting their body, in a position that they could be injured, but doing it for the greater good of the rest of their brothers and sisters next to them, right? And I'm not one to sit here and say it's all about the guys, because we've watched the girls in state of origin, the women in state of origin. We watch how hard they play, okay? So an athlete is an athlete, right? But it inspires all of us. I'm saying you see communities rally around teams. You see states rally around teams. Cities rally around teams. Sports is a microcosm of life because you get an entire lifetime in that 2 to 3 hours, depending on what sport you're watching. You get that all right there, and you get to see the beginning, the middle, the end. But there's nothing that will deflate you more than seeing a club that just isn't trying, or a club that just isn't leaving it all out there, right? So when you watch a club that has nothing going for them, or they have no reason they should be in a match, right? When the pundits are looking here saying this is a for sure victory, and I've told you, Shedheads, plenty of times before, when all the money looks like it's going one way, always bet the other way. For whatever reason, sports has a way of doing that. It has a way of stealing people's money. That's what it has a chance of doing, and it does numerous amounts of times. But the Warriors, I want to just go over this right now, who the Warriors were missing for this match. Sean Johnson, Adam Fanua-Blake, Tohu Harris, Wade Egan, Rocco Berry, Kurt Capewell, Charles Nickel Klokstad, Tane Tuapiki, and Luke Metcalf. All of these guys were out. All of them are out. And if I told you that before that match, that the Warriors were not going to have any of these guys, and said, would you lay down $5 on the Waz, you would have smacked me across the face, put me in a backwards fitting vest, and put me in a padded room. Because it just didn't add up, right? The Finns were playing incredible. The Warriors, yeah, they had the great victory last week, but were they going to come back down to earth? And they didn't. They didn't whatsoever. They just rose to the occasion. And they took their second top 4 scalp in 2 weeks. We couldn't get Cronulla to beat a top 4 side all last year, but the Waz, shorthanded, get 2. Behind the barnstorming, possessed Denon Wateni-Zelezniak. And I always have to pause when I say that name. That's why they call him DWZ, right? It makes it a little bit easier. But Dalen played insane. Like every time that he touched the ball, it was like he'd ingested a line of Bolivian marching power, chugged a can of Monster, and ate and had a cappuccino. It was crazy watching him run towards the line. And the other, maybe the most crazy part, he didn't get hurt the entire match playing that way. And then an informed T. Marie Martin. I talked in detail last week how the game that he had, the man orchestrated the Waz. He moved them up and down the field. And I'm not going to go back and do something that we talked about last week. But the thing about players like T. Marie Martin is that's 2 weeks in a row now. He's played very, very well. And we already know the skill this man has, right? We've watched him have it. But he's seasoned now. He knows that this game is not something that's guaranteed. And he plays that way again. The Waz have to feel very, very well. Very, 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 very good going in and going forward with T. Marie Martin in the halves position. And then, you look, it's not like the Finns were playing bad. The Dolphins are playing very, very well. In the first half, they look strong. They look strong. Herbie Farnsworth played that mustache. That try he had was incredible. It was like a mustache flying through the air. The hammer, again, maybe, tell me if I'm lying, Shedheads, is that maybe the most fun individual you've ever watched run? Is there anybody you see that runs more effortless than the hammer? He's a freak. He's a marvel to watch. But they definitely were playing well enough that they could have gotten the victory, right? But the Waz just kept staying in the match. And when they got their try to cut the lead in half, you just kind of was just sitting there going, they're not going away. They're not going away. And the big talk about the Warriors and why a lot of people have believed in this club is their depth. Their depth is maybe besides Penrith, maybe the second most in-depth team in the competition. And I think we proved it right now with what they just did, missing these 10 players. But you just had a feeling coming out of halftime that if somehow the Warriors found a way to score the first try, that the crowd would get them home. Because it's the fourth game in a row that GIO Stadium had been sold out. Okay? GIO Media Stadium, it hurts me saying names of these stadiums like that. But it was packed. It was chock full. And the Waz fans, and it's great to see because it's such a diverse crowd, right? They were up in full throat. They were letting the Warriors know that they were not out there alone, right? And when the Waz took the lead, you just had this sneaking suspicion that this might be one of those days. And even when the Finns scored the try kind of late and made it a real tight game, there was just something about that team and that crowd. I'm saying the Warriors, even though right now they don't have the greatest record at home, they also, you've got to play into it. And they seem like they're playing into their place. This team is starting to remember that a lot of people had a lot of big-time dreams and had some thought that this team was going to do something later in the season. But if you think about it right now, the Warriors are now 13th, right, on the ladder. And they're 3 points out of a top 8 position. And they've got a bye coming up. They're going to have a chance to get a little bit more healthy. I'm telling you, this next match with the Waz going up to Townsville in round 14 and taking on, their old coach, it's going to be very interesting. Because if they can put 3 together, right, and they by every means have every chance to do this, because you've got a team in the Cowboys that are going to be, you pick up injuries in state of origin, and Tommy Dearden is there, and you just have Val, and they've got some key pieces that are going to be a tad bit tired. So the Warriors, their season is not done. I said that a couple weeks ago, that they had to draw that line in the sand and not go backwards. They're going forwards, and they're going forwards even without their Ferraris that are still in the garage being tuned up. So it's a real telling time for the New Zealand Warriors, and I think that this team is going to rise to the top because I just think they've got too much, and they're learning about themselves right now. And so be careful, NRL, because I think up the waz is going to be a cheer we're starting to hear around the league for the rest of the season. Now, let's stay on this heart and spirit train, because that team, the Gold Coast Titans, I have to talk about them. I have to talk about them in more detail because somehow they scuttled the Bronx by 2. And as I was talking about meeting Desi in the tunnel after the game against Manly, this is still a club missing Kieran Foran, Tanner Boyd, AJ Brimson, Jaden Campbell, Tino, JoJo. But they still continue to play some of the most gritty, attacking football, and their defense. And that's the thing you have to understand. Desi Hasler, even though he's had some incredible offensive players, his staple is defense. Defense, defense, defense. When I saw the grand final in 2013, right, that was one of the most incredible defensive performances that Manly put on to get there. And like I said, they broke some hearts. But they had a defensive stand late in the game that got them to the grand final, which I'll never forget. I was watching in the airport because I was getting ready to fly to Australia, and I remember my mouth just dropped open that somehow Manly, with a rookie in the halves being DCE, found a way to win, right? But that was Desi. Defense. Stevie Mad-Eye, Killer was back there. That club would have given a finger, given a left toe to hold the line, right? And that's what we're starting to see with Gold Coast. But he's got strike with this club too. And even with these guys not being in, they still haven't taken a step back. They're still scoring points. I'm saying they just scored 36 again, missing the players we're talking about. The Titans, they're inspiring a lot of people, and they're inspiring a competition because for some reason, both of these clubs, Gold Coast and the New Zealand Warriors, are really, really, really showing something. And like I said, the look on those Brisbane Broncos' faces when they lost that match is something that I think a lot of people will never forget. It was crazy because I think my mouth was agape too. Now here's something I want you Shedheads to hear and listen to real quick. The Titans have won 3 of their last 5 games, and in the 4 matches they've lost since round 6, they've only lost by a total of 11 points. All right, that's right, Mr. Statistician, you're Shedadamus right there. But think about that. Since round 6, they've been in every match. They've been in every match since round 6. And they should have probably won a couple of those that they lost. And then when we think about this, there are clubs that can't find players, right? Players, that can take them over the top. But how do the Gold Coast Titans continue to find these gems at the fullback position? First, you had AJ Brimson, right? AJ gets injured. Jaden Campbell gets in. Okay, looked like he weighed 115 pounds, but he comes in and lights up the competition. Everyone's like, holy cow, we got to find a place for Jaden Campbell on the field, right? And now they've got Keanu Kinney. This guy, they're calling him King Kinney already. It is fascinating that some clubs just have riches, right? And so now what do? AJ's out, Jaden's out, Kenny's in. You've got to somehow try to find a way to have all 3 of those guys on the field in some type of capacity if you're Desi Hasler. You have to try to find that. Because if you can just find a way to somehow interlock all of these pieces, What can you? I'm saying they could be one of the most dynamic teams in the competition, attack-wise. Now they have to stay healthy, and AJ's going to be out for a while, and we don't really fully know when Jaden's coming back. There had been talk that he was coming back 2 weeks ago, so you've got to look at the Gold Coast Titans as a team that's definitely ascending. You've got to look at the Gold Coast Titans as a team that you don't want to see on your radar if you're a team in the NRL right now, because no one has had it easy playing them for a while. I'm saying they ruined the Warriors' Anzac Day celebration, which was going to be the biggest celebration in the history of Anzac Day at a field. And the Titans came in there and said, yeah, well, that's great, but we're going to get the victory. Is that okay? So that's all you can say. I'm saying the Indigenous round, this last round, was something special. Besides the heart and passion of the Indigenous people and being able to put that on full display, reconciliation, those two performances by the Titans and the Warriors are something that the league is going to be talking about for a while. All right, Shedheads, here it is, 40-20, and the only thing we really almost need to talk about is state of origin. Maroons versus the Blues. Maroons have Billy Slater. The Blues are breaking in Madge Maguire. And let's go over these teams. We're going to start it off with the Maroons. At number 1, Reese Walsh. Number 2, Xavier Coates. Number 3, Valentine Holmes. Number 4, Temesa Tabuai. Well, the Hammer. Let's just say the Hammer. Tabuai Fido. Number 5, Murray Talangi. 6, Tommy Dearden. 7, Captain DCE. 8, Reuben Carter. 9, Ben Hunt. 10, Lindsey Collins. 11, Jaden Sua. 12, Jeremiah Nanai. 13, Patrick Kerrigan. And then on the bench, at the 14, we've got Harry Grant. A lot of people really thought that maybe was Harry finally going to get that 9 jersey over Ben Hunt, but he's going to come off. And don't forget, there's been talk that Harry had a little bit of an illness to start the week. He had been isolated from the team, so sickness did not get into the Maroon Sheds. 15, Mo Fotuaika. 16, Jermaine Hopgood. 17, Salwan Cabo. Again, a guy that's probably going to be an X factor before it's all said and done, Salwan Cabo. You know what this guy can do, and especially in the Origin landscape, how important he's going to be. 18, Felice Kafusi. 19, Brendan Pierre-Cora. And 20, Ezra Mam gets into Origin camp. And a lot of people are wondering, could Ezra Mam take the 6th jersey from Tommy Dearden? And I think, like I said last week, Billy was going to stay. He was going to stay loyal to Tommy Dearden, especially after what Dearden did last year for State of Origin. Now let's go over to the Blues. And this club is going to have 6 debutantes. Madge Maguire wanted to put his stamp on the club, and it started with Dylan Edwards at the number 1 instead of James Tedesco. Number 2, Brian Ta'o. 3, Stephen Crichton. 4, Joseph Suali'i. 5, Zach Lomax. 6, Jerome Luai. 7, Nico Hines. Even though Nico has a little bit of a calf strain, people say that he should be good to go. I think that is also why Madge has Luke Keary on the bench. But again, 8, Jake Trbojevic. 9, Reese Robson. Not Appy Curacao. You know what? Reese Robinson is a big and a more physical presence than Appy, but Appy's crafty, and I think that is not a good play on my part, or my feeling of who Madge should have picked. 10, Payne Haas. 11, Liam Martin. 12, Angus Crichton. 13, Cameron McInnes. 14, Isaiah Yeo, which is, I think has a lot of people scratching their head that Isaiah Yeo is not in the starting lineup. 15, Olukwatu. 16, Spencer Lenu. 17, Hudson Young. 18, Matty Burton. 19, Luke Keary. And 20, Mitch Barnett slides in under this tag. Now, let's break this down really quick. I said this last week that I thought Teddy for sure was going to be in the number 1 jersey. Well, as we've talked about, and I think if you remember this podcast, Madge McGuire and I haven't seen eye to eye for quite a long time. There are people in the rugby league world that still think that Madge McGuire is still the same coach that led South Sydney to their triumphant grand final victory, blah, blah, blah. Hey, Madge is still a coach. He still showed that he has a little bit of strike in him with the way that the Kiwis beat, the Kangaroos a few months ago, right? It was a throttling, okay? The Kiwis handed it to the Roos. But that being said, Shedheads, Madge is not. That year that South Sydney got rid of him, he didn't have the greatest of years, right? He never had any type of greatness, and that all went downhill. We won't go into this again. The moment he benched Benji Marshall after the Tigers won up in Brisbane, he benches Benji, right? And truthfully, the Tigers have never been the same since that move. Not even close. So I really find it hard to believe that Madge would somehow, even though Dylan Edwards has been playing well, that Madge McGuire would pull the plug on the James Tedesco era in Origin. Especially the way that Teddy's been playing. I don't know if anybody did not watch the match Teddy just had against the Raiders. Teddy is still playing damn incredible footy. Now, when you look and say, well, but so is Dylan Edwards. Correct. Dylan Edwards has been playing well as well. I'm the first to say that Dylan Edwards is playing some great football as well. But just because Dylan Edwards is playing great football, that doesn't mean that he should take the number 1 jersey away from the captain of New South Wales. And I want to ask you folks a question. Shedheads, listen when I ask this. If these were maroon jerseys, would Teddy still be the fullback for Queensland? And people have said this time and time again. They get mad, people in New South Wales do, when the Maroons and Queenslanders say that they're loyal and that they stand by their players, right? I do not see the Maroons making the switch at fullback the way that the Blues did and letting Teddy not even have a match where he's like, this is going to be my last match of Origin. But just, no, I'm going in a different direction. And that to me is why the Maroons have been dominating State of Origin for as long as they have. No matter if you don't want to hear it or not, Blues fans, it is fact. It is fact that you have to have chemistry in that club. You have to have cohesion in that club. You have to, look at Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt doesn't play 9 any other time almost, but he gets in a State of Origin camp. He knows his role, right? He knows his role. I know it's a debated topic. I know that Dylan Edwards, he's won 3 premierships in a row now, right? We all know that. But he's done that for the Panthers. He hasn't done that for the Blues. He's done that for the Panthers. And you just, and I hate to say this, but, I'm the Shedadamus. I'll say what the hell I want to. It's my show. You just hope this isn't Madge McGuire and his deep-seated, I'm a bunny. And don't forget who Teddy plays for, the Chooks. And could he really have his captain be a rooster when he is a bunny through and through? You have to understand that's what Madge is. He is. And he's always going to feel himself as a bunny. Even if he does take the Parramatta Eels job. Don't forget, Madge, you have a 2-year contract with the Blues. But anyway. So, yeah, I'm going to say that was a huge call. A call I don't agree with. I think that and the Appy Curacao call could be two calls that Madge looks back and regrets. All right. Now, I will tell you right now, I think Dylan Edwards is going to still play fine. But, and everyone says that, everybody loves Jake Trbojevic. Everybody loves Jake. Jake is the guy that no one can hate, right? Okay, so be it. But Teddy has not done anything to lose that captaincy or that jersey. He just hasn't. And when people say, well, but they've lost the last two series, Teddy isn't the only guy on the field. Last time I checked, there's 13 guys out there. Are we going to just put that all to Teddy because he didn't stand up in a locker room and give a Patton-type speech and lead them to victory? You can't do that. You can't. I don't know what people are thinking, but it's a 13-player game. And because Teddy is one piece of that, you can't put those series losses on his back. So, anyway, that's Madge's decision. I've now said my piece. I'm going to get off the soapbox before my ankle snaps. Now, as we look at the Maroons, I told you about loyalty and all that type of stuff a second ago, and I do think it is funny, Billy's omission of David Fifita. Because David Fifita, since he made the call to stay with the Gold Coast Titans and turned his back on Uncle Nick and the Roosters, has been playing some pretty exceptional footy. And you have to remember, everybody knew, and that's including David Fifita, that he had a big decision that was coming up in round 10, if he was going to do that extension or was he going to be a free agent and go somewhere else next year. And if you watch David Fifita, he's a big man, I know, but he's still a young man. And big decisions like that about your future, where you want to live, where you want to possibly start and grow a family, all that type of stuff comes to mind. And that has been weighing on him up to that point where he finally got past round 10 and said, you know what, this is where I'm going to be, or this is where I'm going, right? And he made the decision to stay with the Gold Coast Titans. And that was a gutsy decision because, we haven't seen a backflip like that since DCE did it to the Titans. So the Titans got their revenge, I guess you could say, by getting it to somebody else. But I did think that David Fifita had been playing footy, and a good brand of footy that probably should have included him being in the Maroons. Now, maybe not starting. I guess that's up to Billy if he wants to say if he starts or comes off the bench. But to not be included at all, that's a little bit of a head-scratching moment for me. Especially how we talk time and time again about the loyalty that the Maroons have. But Billy Slater, I'm not going to call the guy into question. That guy has done some pretty incredible things since he's taken over the Maroons helm, and he's steered those guys to some victories, some victories that will go down in history of Origin as being some of the most impressive victories. So I cannot wait for Game 1. I cannot believe that we've got to wait another week, and that's all we'll be talking about is Origin for the next 7 days to 10 days. But it's here. It is here. These teams are in camps. There won't be any Cameron Munster or Larrikin, Brandon Smith to cause any type of issues or problems. That's a joke. I'm not saying that. I didn't say that because Brandon Smith can't play for either club. So, take that. But, you know what I mean. Cameron Smith, the Larrikin. We talked about him a couple weeks ago. So, Cameron Munster, not Cameron Smith. I cannot believe I could Cameron Smith. Cameron Munster. Sorry, Cameron Smith. I know that right now you're thinking bad thoughts of me and Outside the Sheds, but we'll go over it. So, Cameron Munster. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm going to still say this. Definitely the Maroons are the favorite. They're the betting favorite, and I'm looking at these teams, and I just see cohesion with the Queensland club, and they're definitely, to me, the favorite in Game 1. So we'll leave it at that. Now, getting back to the NRL and getting away from Origin, the Canterbury Bulldogs have had a turnaround season. I think all of us can admit they're high flying. They're a fun club to watch, but they just got done getting served a gigantic piece of and that is because Viliami Kikau, or as I call him, Big Billy Kikau, has been ruled out now 4 to 6 weeks with a compound fracture to his ring finger. I said that when we were going over the Indigenous round scores, that the Bulldogs were going to take something out of this match that might not be a good thing. And Big Billy Kickow not being with a Canterbury club that is fighting for a top 8 position is huge. Right now the Dogs are sitting in 10th with a 5-6 record. So they're right there on the outside looking in. But you have to think, there'd been talk for the first, a few rounds that Big Billy Kickow was in the Dally M race. That's how well he's been playing. So the punishing force that he is not being there, and then with some of the, with Stephen Crichton, their captain, not being there, Matt Burton not being there, this is going to be a very, very eventful next month for the Canterbury Bulldogs because they do not want to lose touch with the top 8. And they have the potential to it, losing those type of players for this Origin round and from injuries. So big loss for the boys from Belmore. Now, I like to go negative and then positive, or sometimes I go going positive and then negative. So let's go positive right now. Because finally, yes, Dom, I'm going to say it, finally, the Parramatta Eels have positive news coming out of the sheds, and that is the return of the King. Not Oregon, that's King Gutho. That's right, Clint Gutherson is back this week, as well as Mitchell Moses. So, let's think about this for a second. They've got 3 victories. Do the inclusion of these 2 superstars, is it enough for the blue and gold to make a run? I've seen Gutho now. He's got a full set of hair back on his head. He's shaved that possum on his chin a little bit, so he's starting to look a little bit more aerodynamic. Now the question is, do you put him back in the 1? Or do you leave Blaze in the 1? Myself, you've got to put Gutho back in the 1 jersey. There is not a player on the Parramatta Eels when he touches the ball that the entire energy of the building changes. He is that guy. And I know that there was talk when BA was there, Brad Arthur, that you need a fullback that has more strike. But when your fullback is the most inspirational guy on the team, and I know we've said inspirational a lot on this podcast this week, but you've got to go with King Gutho. You have to have him back there. And I know, being a corporate man, being a true team captain, Gutho said you can play me anywhere. That is true. But I think you've got to have him back in the number 1 jersey, and you find a way to keep Blaze Halangi somewhere in there so he can still fire as well. I know his agent. I know there's been a lot of talk that he wanted to be shopped around because him and Brad Arthur weren't seeing eye to eye, whatever it is. But you've got to put Gutho, to me, back in the 1 jersey. Now let's also talk about another strike point that's coming back, and that's Mitchell Moses. Mitchell Moses, to me, is the reason the Parramatta Eels are having the season they are. That's how important he is to that club. And I think one of the greatest things for the Parramatta Eels is that Mitch didn't come back a couple rounds earlier so Madge could poach him to go try to play for the Blues. Because I think that would have probably set Mitch back another 5 to 6 weeks because of Origin duty and the niggles he's going to get from playing Origin. He's not going to be the same player, but now he can concentrate on getting back into form, playing with the boys for the Eels, trying to get them guiding around the park. Dylan Brown's game is going to go up because now you can put him back in the 6 jersey and he can just think about running and attacking the line. So, to me, this is a huge inclusion. The Eels, I think their season is about ready to take a gigantic turn. And for a fan base that a lot of people will admit is maybe one of the best fan bases. Calm down, Dom. One of the best fan bases in the NRL. I think that by the end of the season, like I said a little bit earlier, the Parramatta Eels are going to be firing and firing and firing. Now, I may not be the biggest fan of Trent Barrett, but everyone said that's why you want to bring Trent Barrett in because of his offensive mind. Well, we're going to see what Trent Barrett can do with Mitchell Moses running his car. driving his car, pushing his team down the field. And if that kicking game comes back to being as dangerous as it was for the last couple of seasons for the Parramatta Eels. All right, let's go into round 13. We already know your Shedadamus went 50%, so that means you're not losing your home, Shedheads. But we started off Thursday night, Sharks versus the Eels. I just got in talking about this club. The Sharks are going to be without Nico Hines, without Cam McInnes, and the Eels have a bunch of inclusions in. That's why I'm going for the upset. I'm thinking the Eels will right the ship. The emotion of having King Gutho and Mitch Moses back. I've got the Eels beating and starting round 13 off with the upset over the Sharks. Friday, Bulldogs versus the Knights. I know they do it ugly. But the Dogs are going to be missing too many players to me with Burton, Billy Kickow gone. I've got the Knights, again, a team that's not being affected much by Origin. I've got the Knights, again, ascending and getting another victory on Friday Night Footy. Saturday, Dragons versus the Panthers. I know they're missing Isaiah Yao. I know they're missing Nathan Cleary. I know they're going to miss Jerome Luai. But I still think the Penny Panthers find a way to put another new piece back in the machine, another token back into the game, and it fires right back up. And those Penny Panthers somehow find a way to get a victory over the Dragons at home. Raiders versus the Dolphins. The Finns are losing again. Like I said earlier, they're losing the hammer. And he'd started to slide back in, but they had the hammer last week and it didn't make a difference. I, for some reason, think the Baby Greens, I think that every time Ricky's boys take a shot to the chin, they battle back and get a big-time victory. And I think it happens again. I think the Canberra Raiders go up and get a victory over the Dolphins. And finally, Sunday night, Cowboys versus the Chooks. We already know Tommy Dearden's going to be gone. Nanai's gone. Reuben Cotter's gone. Those are some major. I know Jake Clifford's going to slide into the halves with Chatty Townsend. But I just think Teddy's going to have a point to prove. The Chooks are going to have a point to prove. You didn't pick our captain. That's fine. Tell me when the last time the Chooks are going into Origin. Yeah, they're going to be, Luke Keary can play because he's number 19. So Luke Keary will be in for the Chooks. It's going to be too much strike. They are going to, plus it's in Sydney, but I've got the Roosters making a statement victory. And I will say that again, a statement victory over the Cowboys. Now, for our gun of the round, gosh, I wanted to give it to Dalen or to Tay-Marie Martin. But when you look at the numbers, when you look at what he did, when you looked at the weight that was on his shoulders, you had to go with this guy. I gave it to Jerome Luai this week. One try assist, 2 line breaks, 2 line break assists, 9 tackle breaks, 7 tackles made. But here's the real, are you ready for this? Kicker. 641 kicking meters. That's right. Let me say that again. 641 kicking meters. Jerome Luai solidified his spot in the Blues Origin side. And he showed again why the Tigers are so excited that he's coming to be in the halves and be in the spine with Abby Curacao next season. But Jerome Luai, wow, what a match that was. And to put it to the Sharks the way they did was quite impressive. But Shedheads, that closes us out. I hope you guys got to watch some incredible Indigenous football. I hope you have this weekend set up. I know Origin's not this weekend. I hope you guys are able to get on that ventilator, to get that oxygen in your lungs, to just hold on. We just have to hold on for one more week before we get Maroons and Blues. Let's get it on, as the great Mills name would say. But it's almost here. But until that, we've got 5 good matches this weekend, Shedheads. So lock it in, and let's make this happen. But take care of each other. Be there for one another. Just be safe. Be safe until next week, Shedheads. Because again, without you, there's no Outside the Sheds. And without you, your Shedadamus doesn't continue to rock and roll. But until next week, see ya!
And that was another fantastic episode of Outside the Sheds with Corey Jackson, talking all things NRL and all things sports. So please remember to smash the subscribe button and share this with your family and friends and show them what Australian sport is all about.